We are like Ruth and you are Naomi. Your God is our God. Your people is our people. And where you go, we will go. So I want you to know that you are not alone. But most importantly, the God of Jacob is with us. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge. And the battle is not ours. The battle belongs to the Lord. So I would like to sing these two anthems for you today. The National Anthem of America and Israel. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light from what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleam, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets regular, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free? And the home of the brave. נפש יחודי הומייה ופתן מזרח קדימה עין לציון צופיה תקוותנו, התקווה בת שנות 2000, להיות עם חופשי מארצנו, ארץ ציון וירושלים. Much louder. להיות עם חופשי לארצנו, ארץ ציון וירושלים. עם ישראל חי! Israel high, Am Israel, Am Israel, Am Israel high, Am Israel, Am Israel, Am Israel high. Oh Davinu high, oh Davinu high, hey, oh Davinu, oh Davinu, oh Davinu high, oh Davinu high, oh Davinu high, oh Davinu, oh Davinu, oh Davinu high. Please
welcome Consul General Dr. Helen Newman.
Shalom, everybody. I am proud to represent the State of Israel here in Los Angeles. And we stand strong and proud of the state that we represent. On behalf of the State of Israel, I open with special thanks to every single person who has gathered here to support the State of Israel in the fight against terrorism. Wow, what a sight. It's so warming to the heart to see so many gathered here in Beverly Hills. Thank you all. Special appreciation to the municipality of Beverly Hills. We have the mayor and members of council here, and we salute you. Thank you. Also, special appreciation to the law enforcement authorities who stand and support the communities, work night and day for the security of the people of Los Angeles, and also apprehended parts of the people who attacked the Jews in Los Angeles. My friends, there is now a bond of blood and persecution that unites Israel and Los Angeles. Hateful Hamas attacks Jews indiscriminately in Israel. And hateful rioters attack Jews indiscriminately here in Los Angeles. These are both terror and anti-Semitism, both two sides of the same coin. Anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. If anyone doesn't understand that, then just read the charter of the Hamas. We stand together, condemning hatred and anti-Semitism in all its forms in Israel and in Los Angeles. My friends, the conflict between the terrorists and Israel is not about territories, it's not about water, it's not about the Temple Mount, it's about the very existence of the State of Israel in the Middle East. And I have come to say to you that Israel is here to stay. I have come to tell you that Israel will defend its citizens by all means. Israel will stand strong. And Israel will defeat the forces of evil wherever they are. Those who support Hamas support terrorism, anti-Semitism, the use of human shields, persecution of LGBTQ, honor killings of women. But those who support Israel support peace and coexistence. They support democracy, they support freedom, they support life and prosperity together. Lastly, I conclude with one message. We will stand together with all communities and religions which are persecuted, and we hope that they will stand with us, and we thank those that have joined us today to stand together. We are united in the fight against terrorism. Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Please welcome to the stage the Vice Mayor and former two-time Mayor of Beverly Hills and the daughter of Holocaust survivors, Lily Bossy.
I'm Yisrael Chai. Welcome to Beverly Hills. This is how we do it in Beverly Hills. against anti-Semitism. We stand against Jew hatred. We stand against all hatred. We have had many rallies in this location this last year. Many. But this is my first one. I had to be here. This hit too close to home. My home. Our home. Israel. They say that home is where the heart is, and our heart is with Israel. It is truly the fiber of our being. I want to tell you what is the fiber of my being. I am the daughter of Holocaust survivors. My mom, Rose Torin, survived the death camp Auschwitz. All of my family was murdered because they were Jewish. Growing up, I heard two messages from my mom. Never give up and never again. Even at the last day of my mom's life, she said to me, never give up, ever. And I promised my mom that I would tell her story of survival, that we would fight hate of any kind. Yet, this past week, just blocks away, people were beat up while having dinner simply because they were Jewish. I have friends telling me that they want to remove their mezuzahs from their homes. No! This is 2021, not 1930s Germany. I think of my parents who, after the war, went to Israel to find home with hope in their hearts. They met there, they married there. I would not be standing here without Israel. I keep thinking of my mom, a Holocaust survivor. If she was here today to see what we've been seeing. And that is why I am here today. And that is why you are here today. Because I am a proud Jew. You are a proud Jew. And we have no fear about being a Jew. We only grow stronger. And we will fight hate. Jew hatred and all hatred. The message is loud and clear. Don't mess with home. Don't mess with family. Because hate will never win. Mom, we will never give up. We will never give in to hate. And yes, never again. We owe it to the millions who died, who will no longer have a voice. But we do. Am Yisrael Chai!
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome former Special Envoy for Monitoring and Combating Anti-Semitism, Elon Carr!
Thank you, IAC, and thank you, Beverly Hills, and thank you, Consul General Newman, and all the amazing organizers. What an inspiration this is. After more than 3,000 rockets falling on Israeli towns and cities, it is easy to become inured to what it means to have a rocket falling on a town or a city. Well, let me tell you what it means. I spent a year serving in a combat zone in Iraq, and we took fire. Let me tell you what it's like. If you're lucky, you might hear a warning siren. And then you might hear the scream of a tail fin. And seconds later, the ground beneath your feet heaves with an explosion so tremendous that the air is knocked out of your lungs. It's not fun. But you know, I was a soldier in Iraq, and we pay soldiers to take fire. The children of Sderot and Ashkelon and Ashdod and now Tel Aviv and Yerushalayim are not soldiers. And they deserve better than to be subjected to multiple attempts at mass murder. That's what's at stake here. And we are here to say it stops here. In my 2 years as U.S. Special Envoy, several principles animated our work, and they're deeply relevant to why we have come here today. And we have to shout this from the rooftop. Principle number 1 is that hatred of the Jewish state is hatred of the Jewish people, plain and simple. There are those who seek to maintain the fiction that when it comes to the state of Israel, well, it's complicated. You know, it's about statecraft or foreign policy or geopolitics. Well, I'm here to tell you it's not complicated, and it's not about statecraft or geopolitics or foreign policy. It's about Jew hatred, plain and simple. And anybody who demonizes or delegitimizes the state of Israel or denies the Jewish people the right to sovereignty in the Jewish homeland is trafficking in anti-Semitism, and we will call it out for what it is. Principle number 2 is that anti-Semitism is not only a threat to Jews. By the way, if it were, Dayenu, that's enough of a reason to fight it with every fiber of our being, but it's not only about Jews. Anti-Semitism is human history's greatest sickness. It is the source of ruin and misery across the world. And so when we are fighting Jew hatred, please know we are fighting for America. We are fighting for the values on which this country was built. We are fighting for civilization itself and for that better and more just world that each of us seeks to bequeath to our children. And principle number 3 is while we need many things to fight this war, and it is a war, make no mistake. While we need many things to fight this war, none is more important than what we have right here. Unity, achdut, and not just Jewish unity. Unity among all peoples who stand together, shoulder to shoulder, for decency and justice. Thank God for our Christian friends who are here in mass numbers to stand with us. And thank God for the members of multiple communities as well. The Indian community was represented earlier. The Persian non-Jewish community was represented. Standing with us because it's about fighting for a better world. And when we stand together, when we allow nothing to separate us, when we fight as one, ish echad belev echad, there's nothing we can't do. The parashot of the Shavua, we read the last 2, Bamidbar and Naso, is all about counting. God says to Moshe, count Bnei Israel every head, because it's about being counted and being held to account. That is why we have come here today, to be counted and to be held to account. Because we stand today as one, ish echad belev echad, and we will fight and be victorious so that our children and grandchildren can inherit that world that they so richly deserve. Thank you all for what you do. Am Yisrael Chai. Thank you so much.
All right, never has it been more difficult to be a student in school and to be proud of being Jewish. If you're ready to get inspired, please welcome high school senior and pro-Israel student activist, Jennifer Coley!
Never again. Please say this phrase, never again, each year on National Holocaust Remembrance Day. We say never again to remind ourselves of the atrocities that befell the Jewish people when we were a wandering nation, when our safety and our fate was subject to the whims of our host countries. We say never again to declare that never again will our lives and our safety be at the mercy of others. We determine our fate. And today, we can protect ourselves. In Israel, we have a Jewish army. It is called the IDF. And we have a Jewish home. It is called the State of Israel. The State of Israel is the modern-day manifestation of never again. And yet the warning of never again could not ring more present. Today, in 2021, on the streets of Los Angeles just a few days ago, Jews were attacked at a restaurant simply because they were Jewish. And around the world, today in 2021, Jews are attacked simply because they are Jewish. But the origin of these attacks is far more insidious. Today, they no longer say they hate the Jew. Today, they say they hate Zionists. Today, they no longer say they hate the Jewish people. They say they hate the Zionist entity. But the hate is the same. The quest to destroy the Jewish people never dies. It only changes its form. And today, the word Jew has been replaced by the word Zionist. In the 1930s, it was sold as progressive to hate the Jewish people because of the lies based on their inferior Jewish genes. And just like the 30s, new lies are taking place today. In 2021, it is sold as progressive to hate the Jewish state because of modern lies told about the state of Israel. But the hatred is the same, make no mistake about it. It is only under a more insidious name, and it calls itself anti-Zionism. My arm's sore anyway. Some of you, or some American Jews, may not feel a connection to some country, some foreign land 7,000 miles away. But Israel is not just the name of a land, it is the name of our people. We are the people of Israel, each and every one of us. Am Israel Chai. And an attack on the land of Israel leads to attacks on the people of Israel, leads to attacks on Jews worldwide. Make no mistake about it. To my American Jewish brothers and sisters, I beseech you, recognize that anti-Zionism is the quest to destroy the Jewish people in its modern form. Recognize that Hamas, who has fired over 4,000 rockets to destroy Israel, teaches its children to hate and kill Jews. Recognize that those who chant from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, recognize that those who chant from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, intend to annihilate every last Jew from the land of Israel to make Israel Judenrein like the Nazis. And recognize that it is this anti-Zionist sentiment that drives their followers to beat up innocent Jews, like we saw a few days ago on the streets of New York, and to nearly beat to death an elderly Jewish man on the streets of Toronto. We as Jews are under attack. I say this as a call to all Jews and to all people of goodwill, to my American Jews, to our Black and Latino and LGBTQ allies with whom we have marched and supported on the streets. I am a 17-year-old Jewish girl. Soon I will across the country, I ask of you, for the sake of social justice, for the sake of peace, and for the sake of future generations of Jews like me and you, condemn anti-Semitism in all its forms. Recognize and condemn anti-Zionism as the pernicious mask of Jew hatred today. And stop the attacks on the Jewish people. We can no longer afford to be silent. Us Jews, the Jewish community, left, right, and center, it is time we stand together. Never again. The clock is ticking. Your time is now. Am Israel Chai. Thank you.
All right, please welcome to the stage from Sinai Temple, Rabbi Whoopi. This morning, I attended a Brit Milah, a bris. And in your name and in my mind, I made 3 promises to that new soul in Israel. The first promise I made is that we would raise that child in a country where he could walk down any street wearing a Magen David, wearing a kippah, wearing tzitzit, wearing a shtreimel, wearing any sign of our people that he chose, and he could do it freely. The second promise I made was that we as a Jewish community would never stop fighting for peace. But we would not do it through resignation, and we would not do it by acceptance of conditions that we cannot live with. We would fight for our conditions in our land, which is ours through history and through faith, and that our land of Israel would be his for the generations to come. But then I made him a third promise. The Israeli poet Amir Gilboa wrote the following poem. He said, if you show me a stone and I say it's a stone, you'll agree it's a stone. If you show me a tree and I say it's a tree, you'll agree it's a tree. But if you show me my blood and I say it's blood, you'll say it's color. For thousands of years, Jewish blood hasn't been blood to the world, it's been color. No more is Jewish blood cheap in this world. We promise that child that we will not relent and we will not retreat and we will not forget that his soul is as precious as any soul. And we will fight in this land of the free and home of the brave. We will not cower and we will not be afraid. And look around you. Here in public, there were some people who said, don't do this. Be afraid. We spent thousands of years being afraid. We are no longer afraid. We have a state of Israel. We are no longer afraid. We have strong and sincere and committed allies. Look around you that stand with us. We are no longer afraid. We're not here for vengeance or for cruelty. We are here because our people, after thousands of years, have come home. And we aren't leaving. We are for peace, but we are against disappearance. And let the world know once and for all, not only that Dam Yisrael, the blood of Israel, matters and counts in this world. Not only that our children will be raised feeling safe and strong and free, but that God's eternal promise still lives, that the Jewish community is still strong, that we will carry our flags in this wonderful country, in this place of freedom and safety and goodness. And that the flag of Israel and the flag of America stand ultimately for the same thing. And when we put them to bed at night and we recite the Shema, we know they have our protection. They have God's protection. And we will never be afraid. Thank you, Rabbi. Please welcome former Iraqi American model, Miss Universe Iraq 2017, and CEO of Humanity Forward, whose mission is to rebuild the relations between Muslims, Jews, Arabs, and Israel. I texted her on Thursday and said, "Are you available Sunday?" And she said, "For Israel, I'm always available." Ladies and gentlemen, Salah Day!
Thank you. My dear Jewish brothers and sisters and allies of peace in the U.S. and the Middle East, we're gathered here today to repeat for the millionth time, we seek an end to violence. We are desperate to achieve coexistence. We believe that both Jews and Palestinians deserve an equal opportunity of life with dignity. We want to guarantee a future for Jewish and Muslim children to grow up without the fear of being killed and sacrificed by terrorist Hamas, who places them at the front lines before they launch their missiles into Israel, knowing Israel has the right to defend and will defend itself from 3,000 rockets they've witnessed in a matter of days. As someone who grew up in a war-torn Iraq as a child, I know exactly the horror and the trauma of war and how it impacts children. It boils my blood that inhumane radical Islamists use children's death to push their cause of eradicating Jews in Israel. The state of Israel have sought peace and asked the government of Palestine to come to the negotiating table for 72 years. And for 72 years, they said no to finding a solution. Sadly, many believe Jews don't deserve to have their own state. They shout, "We're not anti-Semites, we're anti-Zionists, and we're against occupation." Yet, they don't have a problem with at least 50 Muslim countries that spread all the way from Asia to Africa and Europe, many of whom occupied other lands and committed atrocities against their minorities. So why there is no rage? Because these oppressive regimes are simply not Jews. We need to call out this hypocrisy and call it for what it is. Anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. Many people ask me, why do I, an Iraqi American who's Muslim, keep fighting for the Jewish rights? Let's put aside the fact that my family and I were forced to leave Iraq for just taking a selfie with Miss Israel. Let's put aside the fact that I get daily death threats from people on social media demanding me to stop speaking against anti-Semitism. Tell me, how come for 19 years of my life living in Iraq, I did not meet a single Iraqi Jew until I was 24 right here in Los Angeles? What does that tell you? They don't even teach us in Iraq. They don't even teach us about Jewish history and the 150,000 Iraqi Jews who lived there until the 1950s. They don't tell us how the Iraqi government oppressed them, stole their property, massacred them, and ethnically cleansed them. And they follow the same method in all Arab countries where Jews once lived, whether it's Morocco, Yemen, Libya, Syria, Egypt, why there is not a single Jew allowed to live there today? So those who attack Israel and call it racist and terrorist, tell me, where is the real indoctrination? Where is the real apartheid? Is it in Israel or these countries that are fighting it? The hate crimes that Jews suffered in the past weeks across Europe, Britain, Canada, and in the US are proof this war is on Jews, not just on Israel. My dear Americans, an attack on our Jewish community. What happened? My dear Americans, an attack on our Jewish community is an attack on the entire United States of America and its values and principles of freedom, which it was built upon. We must not only condemn the attacks, but fight it until it's no longer. We will not sit and wait for more heinous and anti-Semitic crimes. We will not stand aside and watch the ignorant and the uneducated about history, led by a filled with an agenda media, lecture us on what's right and excuse anti-Semitic behavior. We will not allow this country turn into a starting point for radical Islamists and neo-Nazis to launch their war not only on Jews but on America, who they call the head of the snake and the great Satan. We will not sit idly by and face another Holocaust. We need to stop the radical Islamist agenda before it has gone too far. Join these amazing 15 movements who put together this rally today and ask them what you can do and how you can help.
Thank you.
Live up to the promise you have sworn, and let the whole world hear you scream in your loudest voice, never again.
Thank you, Salah. Our next speaker helps inspire the youth on American values as a social media influencer. Welcome, online curator and PragerU superstar, Will Witt.
What's up, everyone? I'm glad to be here. My name is Will Witt. I work for PragerU as a political commentator. I am a newly baptized Christian, and I support the state of Israel. My questions today and my main gripes are for the mainstream media, Hollywood, and universities in this country. Why is it that Black Lives Matter is able to go around destroying this country, rioting, pillaging in cities, and the mainstream media heralds them? Or Hamas can fire rockets and the mainstream media heralds them. Look at the John Oliver segment that Dennis Prager reacted to the other day. These people are heralded. Black Lives Matter won the Nobel Peace Prize. What a backwards world we live in. I'm sure they're going to give it to Hamas next year. But when we see violence against Jewish people, we don't see that same reaction in the mainstream media. It is not the same reaction at all. And it's because people are scared to speak up. People are scared to speak up about the anti-Jewish violence. And that's a terrible thing. What we need to do is be stronger than ever speaking up against this violence. People right now are worried what people will think about them, what the left will do to them if they speak up, if they say something against this. But what they should be really worried about is what will happen to the world if they don't speak up now. The future of everything is at stake. Friedrich Nietzsche, a philosopher in the 1800s, had a famous quote where he said, "God is dead and we have killed him." And a lot of liberals and atheists, they take this quote and they say, "Oh, this is a great thing. We're so happy that God is dead." But Nietzsche didn't mean it this way. He said this as a warning that when you take away the Judeo-Christian morality, people look for a different set of values. That's where leftism comes in. Leftism is now the biggest religion in America. And that is a terrible thing. That is the fate we are. Israel and America both stand for Western values and freedom. This is why they want them to take it down. This is why they want to take both of these magnificent countries down, because they stand for these values. Look at California. I've been living here for 4 years. I'm sure a lot of you guys have been here a lot longer than me. California used to be a great place. It was a very conservative place, right? Pete Wilson, Ronald Reagan, and now look at it. It is the worst place in America to live. And that is because people who cared about California stood up, didn't stand up and do anything to stop what was happening to this state. We cannot do the same thing with Israel and the Jewish hate that we are seeing across the country right now. God calls on us to call out evil whenever we see it. I am proud to stand up on this stage and on social media and everywhere I go across this country and call out evil. I hope that the rest of you do the same. Everyone stands up. God bless you all. Thank you.
Please welcome three-time Mayor of Beverly Hills and current City Council member, John Marish.
Professor Henry Louis Gates Jr. has said one of the streams under the floorboards of Western culture is anti-Semitism. When people need it, they just dig it up. We don't want to repeat it, and we do over and over again. Anti-Semitism is just a pseudo-scientific way to describe Jew hatred, an age-old form of racism. You might call it the zeta of racism. Jew hatred is a pathological disease, a virus which continually mutates, which has continually mutated over thousands of years. Jew hatred is a virus for which there is no Pfizer, Moderna, or even Johnson & Johnson inoculation. In a year in which we are now just coming out one of the worst global pandemics in history, another virus grows among us, ever mutating, ever raging, spreading virally on social media. Jew hatred is alive and well in 2021 in Southern California, in America, and across the world. One of the most virulent and insidious mutations of this virus is the raging and irrational hate towards Jews using Israel as a pretext. Social media has become like a petri dish for the ever-new strains of the virus of Jew hatred. Sadly, in 2021, a Venn diagram of Jew hatred and Israel hatred would be more a matter of concentric circles than a figure eight or an infinity sign. Beverly Hills, my city, is one of the only Jewish majority cities outside of Israel. Who would have ever thought that in 2021, Jews would be violently attacked simply for being Jewish so close to the borders of our beloved hometown? We in Beverly Hills remain committed to the safety of all our residents and visitors, but if anything, the recent outbreak of anti-Semitism and anti-Jewish violence shows us just why we need a Jewish state. It makes me profoundly sad, but at the same time, grateful for a Jewish country in our ancestral homeland where we are the indigenous people, a people whose history is defined by never forgetting who we are and where we come from. Others may attempt to gaslight us and the world as people have done for millennia. Tragically, some of these people may be our friends, neighbors, and even family. Others may speak up and fight against all other forms of racism, but stay silent when the oldest, most atavistic, and most elemental form of racism, the hatred of Jews, takes place before their very eyes, in their own backyards and in their own front yards. Do not be surprised. Yes, we need to continue trying to vaccinate people against the virus of Jew hatred. We must not give up trying to cure it, but ultimately we need to protect ourselves against its effects, both the intended effects and the side effects. And yet, though it may feel that way, we are not alone. We have each other. Look around yourselves with gratitude and with chesed. These people are your family. And we have Israel, our imperfect but beautiful spiritual and ancestral home, where we come from, where we are the indigenous people, and where we can, Baruch Hashem, go back whenever we want to, whenever we need to. The only place, it seems, even with Hamas missiles raining down upon it, where we can live as Jews without fear. Because today we can't even live as Jews without fear in the United States of America in 2021. We can't even live as Jews without fear in Beverly Hills, California. How sad is that? While we remain committed to fixing that, let's not have any illusions about the world around us. Pastor Martin Niemöller once wrote a famous poem about he and the others did not speak out when the Nazis came for different groups, including the Jews, and that by the time they came for him, there was no one left to speak out. I'd like to leave you with an updated version of Niemöller's poem from a Jewish perspective. First they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out, because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out, because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. And the Jews realized that because you did not speak out, they had to speak up for themselves. Because you did not act, they had to act for themselves. Because you did not defend them, they had to defend themselves. Because you did not stand with them, they had to stand alone together. Because they were Jews. Because they are Jews. Because we are Jews. Am Yisrael Chai.
Please welcome our next speaker, award-winning investigative journalist focusing on foreign affairs with expertise in the Middle East and counterterrorism, Lisa Daftari!
Wow, I have to just take this all in. This is amazing. From the time I started learning about the Holocaust, I had the same question I'm sure many of you did. How did the world stand by and let this happen? Kristallnacht, literally the night of broken glass, where synagogues, businesses, homes, properties belonging to Jews were vandalized and destroyed. 100 German Jews were killed and 30,000 arrested and taken to concentration camps. That night is commonly referred to as the beginning of the Holocaust. And you wonder, what were Jews in Germany thinking the next morning? I can bet they couldn't imagine or predict something as horrific as the Holocaust was about to happen to them. Because nobody thinks that the communities that they helped build, that they are a part of, that they consider their culture, their country, their city, that society would ever turn on them. European Jews consider themselves European. American Jews consider themselves American. Then why is this happening? Why is this happening to Jews in 2021? And why did it happen to German Jews in 1938? Maybe if Jews were less successful, less educated, they accumulated less wealth, they owned less real estate, won fewer Nobel Prizes, then maybe? No. Anti-Semitism is not a flexible mindset. It isn't a point that you can debate or you can easily change their minds. It's a conspiracy theory that cannot be corrected, not with logic and not with facts. But the curious thing is, how does this conspiracy theory continue to spread and find more and more support around the world? Two sources, the media and universities. Do you notice that the media never clearly reported who started this fight? Do you notice the media didn't even cover the conflict until Israel began retaliating? Why? Because their narrative in newsrooms across America is simple. Israel is the aggressor, so we have to wait for Israel to get aggressive. Notice that the media's only measure of right and wrong is to use numbers. 240 casualties for the Palestinians and 12 Israelis. Why don't they use different numbers? Like 4,000 rockets for Hamas and Israel hitting about 1,000 military targets. Basically, imagine if the US was in a war with ISIS, lobbing thousands of rockets into our northern or southern border. And then the world would be fixated on how wrong the US is for defending itself. It's absurd. Notice how the media simply said the Palestinian children were being killed by Israelis. Never once did they clarify that these children are used as shields, that Hamas puts weapons in schools, that they set up their offices in civilian areas, that Israel makes a solid attempt at removing residents, and most importantly, that Hamas has misfired so many times, killing its own civilians. No question that we care for Palestinian children. We deeply care for all children, but don't let them take us for fools. To say that the Palestinian children deserve a future does not have to mean that Israel is the villain. That's the correlation and the bottom line that the media and anti-Semites all over the world want to establish. You see their logic? Palestinians live poorly, so Jews are bad. Palestinians don't have proper infrastructure, so Jews are bad. And Palestinians don't have as much as Jews, so therefore they are bad. We all agree Palestinians deserve better. Better schools, better textbooks where they're not taught about killing of Jews, better role models that aren't martyrs and shaheeds. They deserve the billions of dollars that are coming in from the US, Iran's regime, Qatar, and elsewhere to be spent on them, not on missiles and not on terror tunnels. Evictions, land, human rights for Palestinians, those are the reasons why Jews are being beat up in Los Angeles? For those of you who are paying attention, anti-Semitic attacks in the U.S. have increased exponentially 2019 and 2020, with over 2,000 attacks each year. I'm sure you all remember the attacks in Pittsburgh, Poway, the New Jersey kosher market, and even a rabbi in New York. Were those about evictions or land or human rights for Palestinians? No, no, and no. The newest contributor to anti-Semitism is pop culture and the hijacking of social justice movements that falsely tell their followers, like sheep, if you follow BLM, if you support gays, if you support women's rights, and the list goes on. Groupthink leads you to hate Jews because of human rights for Palestinians. They've abducted the narrative to the point that it's so deeply interwoven with their causes. You can't strip it or logically argue against it. If we could, then someone should ask Ilhan Omar about the gay pride parade in Somalia, because the one in Tel Aviv is amazing.
Give it to her.
And lastly, it would be short-sighted to see anti-Semitism as just one enemy. Anti-Semitism exists in three forms: the far right, the far left, and Islamic extremism. While right-out anti-Semites in Congress and Senate who have ordained themselves the messengers of this hate should be named and shamed, let's not punish either side of the political spectrum. The bottom line is this: unfortunately, very unfortunately, the friends and supporters of Israel are exponentially fewer than our enemies. We cannot afford to leave even one person who is willing to hold up an Israeli flag or to defend the Jews out on the sidelines.
Lisa, we love you!
I'm still not sure how we got here, but the fact is, we're here. And if history and our collective experiences can tell us one thing, it's that we can't afford to be naive or ignorant. After witnessing deep anti-Semitism in my own life, I've come to this conclusion. While history books may tell it this way, Kristallnacht was not the beginning of the Holocaust. Because it doesn't just happen in one night. It exists beneath the surface of society, sometimes less, sometimes more, until it boils over. So we've posted on social media for 11 days. We've gathered here. We feel uncomfortable, but maybe, just maybe, that is the message. Right now, my friends, right now, there's something brewing underneath the surface. It doesn't have to be gas chambers or a world war, but the effects of thousands of attacks and the silencing of Jews and Israel advocates in Hollywood, in the media, in social media, universities, the classrooms. When you have to be afraid when you're sitting at a restaurant for someone to approach you and ask you if you are Jewish, that in and of itself is a Holocaust. Don't let them kill the spirit of the Jewish people and its supporters. Let's keep fighting the fight to keep Israel and the Jewish people and all who support them safe, free, and thriving for generations to come. Thank you.
All right, guys, the Beverly Hills Police Department asked me to make an announcement. If you're over here on the street, please get onto the parkway. Let's make sure we respect law enforcement. All right, with that said, please welcome accomplished Persian Jewish community leader, experienced attorney, former city commissioner, and 2022 candidate for City Council of the 5th District, Sam Yibri.
Where? Let's go
I'm
say
Israel
hi.
Chai! There's 2 more speakers after me, almost there.
Oh my God.
Take the mezuzah off your door. Don't go to a kosher restaurant or a kosher butcher this week. Don't go to a synagogue or send your kids to Jewish school this week. Tuck in the Jewish star that's around your neck. And if anyone asks, tell them you're not Jewish. For centuries, we've been told that during times of Jew violence, we need to protect our own and be quiet and put our heads down. Today we say no. As a young kid, I was told what my parents experienced in Iran, that they were told these words themselves when the country of their birth kicked them out and persecuted the Jews of Iran. I never thought this would ever happen here in America, the greatest country of the world. The 21st century, after the century of horrors, we were promised that those things would never again occur. And then it happened. After a week of us marching and standing with Israel this Tuesday night, shortly after 10 o'clock, all of our phones exploded. Texts and videos, reactions, fear and outrage. And of course, my mother said, take down your mezuzah, don't wear your Magen David, it's not safe out there. In Los Angeles, we say no. We are fortunate enough to have leaders who have stood with us, Jewish and non-Jewish. Our elected officials, LAPD, Beverly Hills Police Department, our federal marshals, our sheriff. They've all condemned it in the loudest, unambiguous terms that anti-Semitism and Jew hatred have no place in Los Angeles. That they will hunt down and find the perpetrators of these hate-based acts of violence, and they've already found the first person. They are redoubling their effort to keep our community safe. And we know that these acts are not anti-Zionist, they're anti-Semitic, or the better term, Jew hatred. And what makes hate crimes especially heinous and horrific is they don't just affect the victim, not those young men at that restaurant. The point of hate crimes and anti-Semitic violence is to strike fear in the hearts of all of us so that we change the way we live our lives. We became ashamed of what we value. And to that we say no. Today we draw a line. On that point, it's imperative on all of us to act. Hate crimes are the most underreported crimes anywhere. If you see something, an act of hate, anti-Semitism of any kind, big or small, against Jew or anyone else, we need to speak up and report it. On this issue, we are our brother's keeper. And finally, today, there are Democrats here, there are Republicans here, and we have many differences. But today we agree that there is no place for anti-Semitism in Los Angeles, in America. There's no place for hate of any kind against any of our brothers, or any of our neighbors. Today we take a stand together, united. We will not tolerate Jew hatred anymore. Today it stops. Am Yisrael Chai!
All right, please welcome syndicated radio show host, best-selling author and lawyer, seventh-generation Israeli, whose father, by the way, fought in Israel's wars from the War of Independence to the Yom Kippur, my personal friend, Beverly! Thank you, Mikey. What an honor it is to be here today. Thank you all for being here. This is such an extraordinary crowd. I had no idea it would be this big, and it's fantastic. It's what we need. I want to thank so many of you for being out here, especially the young people, both Christians and Jews. This is a turning point. Thank you. You are the next generation. You will make the difference. Among them, and you know them, is my son, Max Lurie. He's there somewhere. He's a leader, and you need to be a leader like him. Please. Thanks also to, this is about information. Stand With Us is here. Roz Rothstein. Esther Renzer. All right. It's fantastic. It's great to see you. We also have Robert Stearns from Eagle's Wings here. Fantastic Christian organization. This is a mutual dual group of Jews and Christians united in the most important mission we have today. Also, I want to thank Bishop Juan Carlos Mendez, who is here today. These are Churches in Action. This is an amazing church that brings up all different churches of all kinds. 2,300 churches together in 85 countries. Very impressive. All pro-Israel. Amen. Look, I want to say that you can try to persuade all the anti-Israel extremists out there. You can do that all day long, but nothing will happen. Nothing will make a difference in that way. You can try. It won't work. The people that you can influence are those who don't know very much about Israel. Those who sit on the sidelines. You need to speak to them. They understand the difference between evil and good. The extremists on the other side, those who chant for the death of Israel, there's no talking with them. Don't even try. All they want is, all our enemies really want is to seek destruction, darkness, and death. This is a battle for what is right and what is good. Our goal is not to convince the extremists, but to convince those who do not know as much about Israel's region or its history. And in a way to convince ourselves of the good of Israel. For that, you should go to Stand With Us, I said, in so many other information sources, like Dennis Prager. And Prager U. We must never assume that others will do the work to protect Israel. We have too many enemies that we need, so we have to have all hands on deck all the time. We all must be a part of the fight against the evil of Hamas, of Hezbollah, of Iran, and all the others who seek to destroy Israel. Yes, and AOC and her squad. So, your best weapon is to get informed and get others informed. Stand up as a Jew and stand up as a Christian and as an American for Israel. Our government needs to stand for Israel as well. It must not hesitate. Israel's enemies are watching what America says very closely. We must not embolden them to think that we don't care. Remember that with Israel, we have become strong. We live with more respect and success in every nation in which we live, especially in America. So we cannot take Israel for granted. Israel is like water. While it is abundant, we appreciate it, but we do not even think about it. But take away that water, and that's pretty much all you think about. Hamas and Iran are in the business of death. Worse, they hold their own people hostage, except that their people often don't even know it. Worse than that, Hamas often makes their people do their horrific bidding for them. Instead of building hospitals and new infrastructure, they build tunnels. When they're not building tunnels, they're destroying hospitals and greenhouses and everything else the Israelis may have left them in 2005. Their operating system is hate.
It's the last one.
This is their reason for being. We need to change their operating system, a system which other Arab countries like the UAE, Bahrain, Yemen, Sudan, Morocco have all recently adopted themselves. This is not an Arab versus Jew thing. Now is the time to fight for Israel. Now is the time to say something, to stand for something. You will look back on these times and you will ask yourself, did I do what was necessary for Israel and for Jews, and for that matter, for Christianity and for civilization itself? Did I at least speak out? Did I show up and make myself counted as a supporter? Or did I hide in my shell, worried that my support might cost me some business, that I might get attacked physically or verbally, or heaven forbid, that someone might defriend me on social media? No, yeah.
We don't care.
Courage is not what you do where you think that there are no consequences. Courage is what you do when you know there are consequences. Israel cannot do it alone. I want you to know that Israel needs us, all of us in the diaspora. We are an essential part in the survival and success of Israel. We are Israel right here. We cannot separate ourselves from Israel and expect her to survive any more than we can take out our own hearts from our own bodies and expect those bodies to survive. Now is the time. Your fellow Jews and Israel and all of the supporters of Israel are counting on you. They are watching. And far more importantly, God, Hashem, is watching. Amichad Chai. All right, folks. Now it is my great honor to introduce to you my good friend, my mentor, and an incredible force for good in our world. You know, and the Beatles thought they had a tough. Dennis is the host of the Dennis Prager Show, founder of PragerU, writer of countless books and articles advancing the Judeo-Christian mindset and values. His most recent being his Rational Bible series, which I love deeply. And truly one of the brightest minds of our day, Mr. Dennis Prager.
I'm not sure I have to say anything, actually. I'm very touched by your reaction. I have a few things I want to share with you. But right before I speak, I saw someone who is one of the great Jews of our time, Rabbi Shlomo Kunin, who is the head of all the Chabads on the West Coast in California. And I asked him to say something for a moment. A blessing from a group I love, Chabad. Rabbi Shlomo Kunin.
Wow, what an honor. You must understand that the Lubavitcher Rebbe, when they came to say to him that Sixth Day War is coming, this terrible war. All of these things Rebbe spoke before, 10,000 Jews. And the Rebbe said, Israel, Makom Ba'olam, Achi Betoach. Israel is the safest place in the world. And the Rebbe said, you gotta do this. Put on film every day. Put mezuzahs on your door. If you're afraid of a mezuzah to buy, call us, we'll give it to you for nothing. And nothing to be afraid of. The ladies would like to shop as candles and all the rest. And we're going to see soon the coming of Mashiach. Immediately, right now. Give your kids a Jewish education. Because intermarriage is a horrible thing. Realize that. Educate them with Jews. The teachers believe in what they are teaching. I turn this over now to Rabbi Beverly.
Thank you, Rabbi Kuhn. Thank you, Reb Shlomo. By the way, if you give your kids a Jewish education, in fact, any religious education in America, you are vaccinating them against a much, much greater threat than COVID. And that is what they will study at university. They will learn the opposite of truth. My friends, there is a much larger issue than just Israel, and God, that is enough for any of us. But there is a larger issue. A world in which Hamas is not evil and Israel is a sick world. That is the greater crisis of our time. That we have to make the case at a rally in the year 2021 that Israel is not the villain and Hamas is sick. It is morally sick. There is something at the heart of the West that is sick at this time. And it is part and parcel of the notion that America is evil. The people who believe America is evil believe Israel is evil. They go together. There are no exceptions. Once you accept a great lie, you can accept a second great lie. So please understand the genesis of this sickness. A group of terrorists sends thousands of rockets over a peaceful country to destroy as many people as possible. The other country responds, and the responding country is the villain. Do you understand how sick things have gotten? Do you understand how bad it is at Harvard, at UCLA, at the University of Missouri? It doesn't matter what college. A young woman who attends Harvard, who is going to be working for me this summer, told me that she saw a sign up at Harvard that the Jews went into Palestine for oil.
Shame on them! I didn't find it.
At Harvard. The ignorance is as great as the evil. I guess they really blew it, the Jews, didn't they? They should have gone to Saudi Arabia. And instead, look at where they ended up. People believe that. Jews went to Palestine for... It's not like the Jews had been there for thousands of years. There has never been... People don't know this. They don't know anything because they went to college. And therefore they know almost nothing. And what they do know is probably wrong. And I wish I were joking. I wish I were exaggerating. There have only been 3 independent states in what is called Palestine in the history of Earth. Jewish state 1, Jewish state 2, and Jewish state 3. That is not an opinion. That is not pro-Israel. That is true. There has never been a Palestinian state. There has never been an Arab state. There has never been an independent Muslim state there. 3 independent Jewish states. It's not like the Jews looked on the map and said, what a great place to go. Lovely beaches and oil. No, it's that they went back home. That is all it is. My friends, there are 22 Arab states. There is not room for one Jewish state the size of New Jersey. Do you understand what is being said? There are 50 plus Muslim states in the world. There is no room for one Jewish state. If it weren't for the Jews, there would be no Islam. Muhammad rooted his beliefs in what he studied from the Jews. Did you know that Muhammad fasted on Yom Kippur? I'll bet you didn't know that. And only when the Jews rejected him as the final prophet did he change it to Ramadan. I think we have the better deal because one day is easier than a month, but nevertheless, I have no issue with this Muslim practice, which can certainly be elevating. But it's unbelievable what we are expected to believe. Israel responds. So what is the number? I don't know the latest number of Palestinians that are purported to have been killed. 220, 11 days of rockets, and 220 Palestinians in Gaza got killed. Do you understand how pinpointed Israel was to avoid civilian casualties? Do you realize that? We have a video up, which, by the way, Prime Minister Netanyahu tweeted out, a PragerU video, by the commander of British forces in Afghanistan, titled, "Israel is the most moral army in the world." For a British colonel to say that about another army, that is quite a remarkable compliment. It is the most moral army in the world. The last thing Israel wants is to kill civilians. They use civilians. I believe with every fiber in my body that every Jew standing here, not to mention non-Jew, every Jew standing here, every Israeli, virtually, I can't speak for all, cares more about Gaza deaths than Hamas does. I think we weep for their children more than they do. They are scum. Hamas is scum. If you don't know that, there is something wrong with you. It is as simple as that, and I bet every one of you has a relative or a friend that cannot say Hamas is evil. That is frightening, and if it is one of your children, I want to embrace you, because it has to be so painful to have a child whose conscience has been so corrupted that they cannot recognize good from evil. Hamas is a force of evil. And nobody knows that better than a lot of Palestinians who have been tortured to death because they opposed Hamas. You don't read about them in the New York Times. So let me talk to you about the media. Yes, you can boo all you like. That's correct.
Fake news!
They have been taken over by the same people who tell us Israel is villains. You know what the New York Times actual headline was last week? Violence breaks out in the Middle East. If the New York Times had the same reporters today, or in 1941 as it does today, their headline would have been, "Violence breaks out at Pearl Harbor." By the way, if you went to college in the last few years, you probably don't know what happened at Pearl Harbor. I'm not kidding. I bet you that the average college student today does not know what happened at Pearl Harbor. All they know is America is systemically racist and Israel is an apartheid state. That's what they know. There are members of Congress who say Israel is an apartheid state. Isn't it odd then? Why would Arab Israelis want to stay in an apartheid state when they could be free in any Arab country? Because they're the freest Arabs in the Middle East, the Arabs of Israel. They have the most rights. Where would you rather be a gay Arab? In Israel or in the Palestinian territories? Where would you rather be a female Arab? In Israel or in any Arab country? Why is this not obvious to the New York Times? Because the New York Times is not interested in the truth. It just isn't. I say this with pain, but it is a fact. CNN is not interested in truth. They're interested in taking down the West. And it begins with the United States and Israel. They are on the tip of the spear of Western civilization, of the idea that there is a truth. It's all interrelated. This is what you must understand. You can't say, oh, they're wrong on Israel, but they're right on America. If you think they're right on America, then what you have said is truth doesn't matter. And if truth doesn't matter, then Israel is the other villain in their eyes. That's what needs to be understood. This is all part of a battle to smear what is good. The prophet Hosea said, woe unto those who call good evil and evil good. It is apparently not a new problem in human existence of the inability to call that. And finally, I want to talk to you about the other thing we hear about a great deal, world opinion. So, ask the Armenians how much world opinion helped them. Ask the Jews of the Holocaust, how much did world opinion help you? Ask the Chinese under Mao, 60 million starved to death and tortured to death by Mao. How did world opinion show up in your case? How did world opinion show up for the 20 to 40 million Russians and others that Stalin killed, the 6 million Ukrainians that he starved to death? World opinion? I spit on it. It is a moral fraud. When Iran is the head of the Human Rights Committee for Women at the UN. You can't make that stuff up. Is that not evidence of a sick world? Iran should not be on a committee, let alone head a committee, anything to do with human rights. The Iranian regime is an evil regime. Why can't people say that? I'll tell you why. I've believed this my whole life. People cannot stare at evil. Evil is not dark. You can stare into the dark. Evil is bright, and people cannot stare into the bright light. So what happens when you don't call evil evil? May the person be treated well. What happens when you don't call evil evil? You call good evil. That is a rule of human nature. If you don't fight real evil, you will make up evils to fight. If you don't fight Hamas, you fight American white supremacists. You fight Israeli apartheidists. You make up evil because you won't fight evil. That is why this is the battle of our time. And one final very, very problematic statement. I don't know if you know this, it was just brought to my attention today, but a letter that was signed by dozens of rabbinic students in American Jewish seminaries, calling Israel an apartheid state and calling it the villain. Dozens at the Reform Movement Seminary, the Conservative Movement Seminary, and the Reconstructionist Movement Seminary. That is how dark things are in Jewish life. And will they be condemned by Reform, Conservative, and Reconstructionist rabbis? I don't know. But if you don't condemn that letter, then the darkness has taken over non-Orthodox life, and I'm not an Orthodox Jew. I have no axe to grind except truth.
Yes!
Something bad is happening in Jewish life.
I agree.
If these are your future rabbis, don't go to their shul. Yeah, the darkness has hit us, my friends. It's not them. It's us just as much as them. It's a good and evil issue, my friends. So you were told before, you know, Miss Iraq stood up here. Do you know what guts it took for her to stand with Miss Israel and take a photo? She can't go back to Iraq. That's it, my friends. That's my final word to you. The greatest of the human traits, the greatest, is courage. And I'll tell you exactly how to get it. You know what God says to human beings more than any other thing in the Bible? Al tira. Don't be afraid. Then you will have courage. People will drop you from their Facebook page. My friends, that is not the Gulag Archipelago. That is not Auschwitz. Okay? Let's be clear about what fate that is. And by the way, if friends drop you because you say Hamas is the villain, then thank God that you know about your friends now, and you don't have to learn it 10 years from now. So friends, listen. If you want to sleep well at night, get out of the closet. That is what Jews and conservatives must do. Get out of the closet. It's tough in the beginning, and it's exhilarating at the end. Thank you. God bless you.
I love